I try to do that every night, and
Okay.
I feel like, you know, a lot of people say, oh, that's weird. You talking to
No,
the
nothing's
dead, and
weird about it.
there's nothing weird about it because that's what we are. We're spiritual. We're spirit.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This is just flesh.
That's
You
right.
know, but when I feel him, when I dream and I wake up and I feel him, I just speak. I do the same
That's
thing.
all.
I do the same thing with my father. I feel like
Okay.
they both up there just
Yeah, that's
holding
right.
me up.
That's a
Yeah.
talent black people seem to have.
And I really do. I've been having dreams since I was a young boy, and those dreams are really coming now. And I'm like wanting to know. I'm really learning the different parts of those dreams, and it's helping me get through this life.
Mm.
Well, you're helping us understand George. See, George exposed the world to energy. You know,
Yes.
beautiful guy gets hung up in some jive, $20 switcheroo.
Right, right. It's just-
And what happened? He runs into some guy who had a beef with him,
right.
and he kills him in front of everybody.
Exactly. And like I said, when I was in Minnesota to speak on that, when I was in Minnesota for that month for the trial, you know, I didn't just go to the hotel and to the trial. I felt the need to go around
Through the neighborhood.
just to feel him. Wherever he went,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
go.
Yeah.
So I went to Turning Point. It was a place that the program he was in. I went over there and I just to see what it was like, and they showed me the room he used to be in. They showed me the facilities he used to have the counseling sessions in, and you could just feel him. Everybody had nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah.
They was like, he helped me. When I wanted to quit the program and go back to the streets and do this, he would pull me to the side and be like, no, don't do that. You got to stay in here with me. We got to do this together.
Mm-hmm.
These are words I heard from the people in the program.
Right.
This is not what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So I'm learning from other people more about my brother, where I couldn't be there, even though it was a phone call we had. He asked me. He said, "Bro, you got to come down here, man. You got to see this, man. You got to see this program. I'm doing good." He said, "So when I finally get to the place where I'm good, then and my daughter was just born. He said that Gianna, he could bring Gianna, and I could bring my daughter Harper, and they could have play dates.
Right.
So that was a plan that we was trying to get into bring it to fruition, which never came about. But that's my hope and dream is to get my niece with my daughter just to have a play date.
It sounded like he was, in spite of what he was going through, he was always caring for somebody else.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
reminded me of a friend when you mentioned that he told the other roommate, no, you got to stay. You know, you can't quit. And I thought of John White when he had his situation and he went to state prison. I said, John, for whatever reason God is placing you here, you have to find a reason.
Right.
And John, just like your brother, he went to state prison. And he was a deacon at his church. He went to prison, and during his time, he sat with two young brothers that were contemplating suicide in prison, in two different prisons. And we talked about that after. I said, that's why God needed you there.
Right.
It wasn't about you. You know, going to prison wasn't about you. It was about your concern for another human being.
Right.
And saving, you know, and I hear what you're saying about
George. Well, we have two other
George.
people that you, one of them you know, Ronald McHenry and Julian Hemmings. Are you guys on Zoom? Yes.
Hey.
hey.
So you, instead of you being here, you're on Zoom.
Yes, and I've met Terrence many times. Terrence has told me the story of his brother, and as he tells the story, it just reminds me that George Floyd's story is our story. George Floyd, for me, I can see myself in George in so many different ways. Growing up in a single-parent household, 70% of us grow up in a single-parent household.
70%.
And to see George Floyd go through his crucifixion, and then create the change worldwide is an astonishing. As I was listening to the reel on George Floyd's life and how he came out of the roughest parts of Houston, I thought about Jesus. I thought about the passage of in John chapter 1:46, where it says, Philip found Nathanael, and these are two of Jesus' disciples, and told him, we found the one Moses wrote about in the law, one of the prophets were told, Jesus from Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And then the question was asked, can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Yeah.
Right? Because Nazareth was the ghetto. It was the roughest place in Galilee. And when Jesus saw Nathanael approach him, he said to him, you know, I'm the one. And so when I begin to hear the story of George Floyd, I see how God is able to use people and bring about change. And it is amazing to me to see that it took a pandemic, it took the crucifixion of many people, but in particular George Floyd, and we're still seeing a lot of victims slain. But, you know, we're calling for the George Floyd Policing Act. It is an honor to be in your presence, Terrence, and understand that, you know, your family is one of the great families in our community, and understand that, you know what, we were talking about real people. And you know, I'm just honored. I just think to myself, where do we go? How do we continue to keep his name about? I talked about creating a piece in the honor of George Floyd, but unfortunately, we continue to see mishaps in this country with policing, and it's going to take us to continue to march, continue that fire, right, during the pandemic to see the kind of change that we want to see.
Wow.
You mentioned the George Floyd bill that we're working on, and we have Julian Hemmings, a law student at Michigan, and you're also on Zoom. Hi, Julian.
Yeah.
What do you think about what we're talking about? George Floyd.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Say again for a second.
There you are.
He didn't hear what you said. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, we were talking about the George Floyd Act that we're working on, the George Floyd bill. As a law student, we wanted your interpretation of how we should be working on that.
Yeah. Well, first I want to thank Terrence for coming on the show, and thanks Gilchrist for, of course, inviting me, and Officer Graham and the minister for creating our community, and Terrence again for the bravery that he continues to display by walking, talking, and reminiscing about the memory of George Floyd, his brother. And that's really one of the biggest keys to make sure that this bill gets passed. And I say this humbly to Terrence that I apologize if what I'm saying sounds in any way crass, but by Terrence coming outside and speaking to the public constantly about his brother's memory is a way in which the story is never forgotten. By him articulating who his brother was, in spite of his pain, the pain of his family, of losing someone that they love, their own flesh and blood, is the way in which we can get this bill passed. This bill will reduce the incredible amounts of power that qualified immunity has to protecting state officials and way they treat folks, especially the way police officers are treating people in the neighborhood. This bill will be put in place to ensure that the standard by which police officers are engaged with for mens rea will go, I think we've talked about this before, will go down from intentional to knowingly. And what that means, right, guys, is that The original standards it was whether or not the officer intended on doing said harm that resulted in the harm. The question now with the George Floyd bill, if it's passed, is whether the officer should have known whether his conduct could have caused that harm. And, we're thinking about Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, all the people who've received nothing but injustice. This standard would do a lot of good. My last point is that George Floyd's memory does a lot of work to get this bill passed as well, because he has touched all of our lives as long across the globe. And the fact of the matter is that this bill is passed because there are a lot of strong interests within Congress, namely the police unions, that are ensuring that this bill doesn't see the light of day. This bill is also something where it has gotten a majority on the Democratic side. So this bill is something that's really supported by party line. And the way that this thing can get passed, guys, is by people registering to vote and voting. This bill, in addition, this is my last point, allows for state prosecutors to develop independent groups so that they can do the investigation on the police. So it's a very expansive bill that can do a lot of good, that can ensure that a lot of people are protected and creates a lot of police reform, and we really need them in Congress.
The whole point is quality immunity. Now, explain quality immunity.
Qualified immunity is what is given to law enforcement officers. People should know that there are lobbyists across the country, and there are lobbyists who are in state government representing the local police departments. Their job is to talk with the representatives and have any necessary legislation passed, whether it's codifying something as a crime or declassifying it. In the event where a person is, what I say, murdered, every officer is told to articulate, as long as you can articulate that you were in fear of your safety. That is called an affirmative defense. That means although you may have wrongfully killed somebody, as long as you thought that this person was a threat to your safety, you had the right to kill them and you wouldn't be prosecuted.
Say that again?
As long as you perceived, and wait, I'm going to give you an example of another true case. I was in Manhattan Criminal Court years ago, and a guy was being charged with menacing, and the judge asked, "Officer, how did he menace you?" He said, "By the way he looked at me."
Yeah.
He was black, looking at a white officer, and he arrested him for looking at him in a particular way, and he said he felt threatened. All right? We need to understand that the black man in America is still treated with less value than a dog.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
In the 1850s, we had more rights in 1850 than we do now. Because as a slave, you were considered chattel, subhuman, and there were laws to protect you from being abused. And 2 men in North Carolina were sentenced to be hanged for killing a slave. Now, that won't happen today.
Right.
But because we were considered as animals, you know what they'll do for a dog.
Oh,
if you kick a dog, you know what they're going to do. They're going to send you to state prison.
Yes.
So getting back to the affirmative defense and that qualified immunity, well, we can't prosecute the officer because he was in fear for his safety. So when you're afraid, you can just summarily kill somebody and it's okay. My question is, how many people walk the streets of New York or any city around this country in fear and don't have a gun to protect themselves?
Right.
They're not taking a bottle or a rock and throwing it at somebody because they're scared. So that needs to be changed. Police officers are given broad latitude It needs to be tightened. You cannot say, well, he was reaching for his beeper or his pager and I thought it was a gun, or Skittles in his hand. These things need to be changed. So there are lobbyists in Albany for the Metropolitan Police Conference for NYPD, and these are men who work strictly on bringing about laws that are favorable to police officers.
Well, you see here from an officer, 20 years on the force, telling us the real inside story. Now, we hear these excuses all the time for killing people. I was afraid of them. You hear on the body cams them giving a reason for beating up Nicholas. They're making up stories as they go along. So this has been a defense throughout our history. I feared for my life. So this is what the George Floyd bill will eliminate.
Hopefully.
Elimination?
Hopefully.
All right, so this is what we got to vote and strive for. So what I want to do
Wait, say,
now,
Mr. Gilchrist, ask that question again. I just want to make sure you just ask it again. What did you say?
You said that's what we have to vote and strive for?
we have to vote and pay attention to what are you saying? I was saying.
Oh, did you say the George Floyd bill ends qualified immunity?
Yes, we have to eliminate that. Qualified immunity.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that what the
I
George
don't-
Floyd bill does, right? It eliminates qualified immunity, the George Floyd bill.
can you come back to me? I just want to confirm that, okay? I just want to confirm it, because what I don't want to happen is that, the other side takes our perspective and think what we're saying is that we don't believe in police officers, that we don't think police officers are good. I know it's not what you're saying, but I think that other people can take the message that we're extending and try to perverse the image of what the George Floyd bill actually does, which the goal is to create safer communities, right? And we think police officers are part of that. Obviously, we don't think police officers are evil. There's a role for police in our neighborhood. The issue that you're describing, Officer Graham is talking about, who was an officer, right?
Right.
Is the notion that you can take black life without consequence,
Right.
no matter how innocent. And that's why there's a notion that I was extending 2 weeks ago, that when it comes to black life, there appears to be no due process. And if we're all, as Americans, we believe fundamentally in privacy and the rights of autonomy, and that the George Floyd bill aligns perfectly within the American tradition of protecting the rights of people, that an expansive police state is something that no one wants, black or white,
Right.
rich or poor.
Right.
So, I just want to extend that.
You basically, we just looking for accountability from,
That's it.
from law enforcement, period.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
You
All
know,
right. So-
Everybody is accountable.
Yes.
Everybody, whether you're homeless, whether you're the president of the United States, a senator, the sanitation worker, everybody is accountable for themselves and what they do and the task that is assigned to us.
right.
You can't expect to get paid at the end of the week if you didn't come to work. There's
Right.
accountability in everything.
Well, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to go further into what caused this whole rift between your brother and Derek. Play item 3 for me. Give you a little idea of what kind of person Derek was and how he was perceived by, well, you'll see it. And stand by. That gives you a little idea of part of it. I know this is difficult for you, Terrence, but I want people to understand what a good guy did and got tied up in some mess over $20. I don't know if he ever knew it was a phony 20. All right? So why would he sit there in the car and wait for them to come out of the, I mean, it was
Right.
such a silly
Mhm.
thing to be, to
Yeah.
have to run into an old friend who hated you, hated him, hated his guts by whatever problems they had at that club.
Right,
I imagine it was females.
right. Had to be.
Had to be,
That-
right?
That's usually when the egos really fly off the
Yeah.
handle.
So here you
Money or
had, they
female.
had a riff in the club, probably about women. He was in the inside and everybody liked him and everybody hated Derek,
Right.
all right? So he was jealous.
You know, I basically, like I said, being in Minnesota for that month, you know, you go around the town and you, it's not like I went around saying, oh, I'm George Floyd brother, interviewing everybody. No, it was just like, you know, people recognized me and people would just come up to me and be like, you know, Chauvin. I had few people, even I was in a sneaker store and I can't remember her name, but she came up to me and she said Chauvin had a interaction with her uncle, same type of behavior, you know, and it's like, man, and then you hear about the infractions that he had, and they still kept him on the force. Like, what was really going on? But as far as that club, like I said, I went around Minnesota, and it was a few people I ran into that was telling me they frequent that club,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw different altercations, like different altercations with my brother, and I'm like, you know, my brother would like they said, he was fun, loving,
Yeah.
interactive. So
Yeah.
they liked him. So when anything happened inside the club, he would, you know, calm it down. You know, break it up, calm it down. And some people said that, you know, since he was an officer, he would come in and try to handle the situation. And they said my brother would say, "I got it. We good." Ego,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you know, because my brother's not an officer, so I guess he felt like, oh, I'm the law, so let me handle it. But my brother already had it handled, from what I'm hearing from the people that was in frequent the club.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see this happening, and I'm looking at the situation, analyzing, I'm like, yes, they did know each other, but could they really prove that in court? Because like I said, they could have proved that in court. It would have been open and shut, case
I would
closed.
think.
That's it.
I
They
would
could-
think.
They could. I don't think they could do that because it
All they
wasn't
had
enough
to-
people talking.
All they had to do was play this video or ask people.
It's how come they couldn't get the video? I don't know. It's a lot of inside stuff, but you know, I digress.
The prosecutorial team, starting with the Attorney General, this trial I watched,
From a professional point of view,
yes,
yes.
and it's the best I've ever seen. The Attorney General,
Who was a black man?
yes.
Mention that.
Yes.
the team that he assembled,
Yeah.
each member of that team was a tactician in the specific area of the trial that they were handling,
Right. That's right.
medically and otherwise. If you're going to talk about policy and procedures of the officer, that maximum tactic, I've never seen that. That's something we don't do here. But I was so blessed to see how they gave no wiggle room for the defense. And we haven't seen anything like that in New York City. In all of the killings that we've had, we've never seen a team assemble as, when we would go out on crime scenes, every detective has an assignment. So as we're heading out, everybody knows their task. Same thing with these attorneys. Each one knew his or her task, and when it was time for them to step up to the podium, they executed.
Right.
They executed. And it was, don't take this the wrong way, it was a joy to watch it,
Right. Understood.
to see justice working as it should have worked in so many other cases in the past.
Right. Right.
But that the Attorney General out there,
Yeah.
I give kudos to that
Definitely.
team.
Definitely.
They handled it so well.
He definitely orchestrated a team, a dream team, we call it. He definitely did that, and I thank him for it. You know what I'm saying? I thank him for the justice, because and then that's another thing. My justice looks different from everyone else's justice. Everybody else want the death penalty. They want life in prison. They want my justice coming from where I come from. You know, seeing the officer of the law do that many years and get convicted of it. Yeah, that's something he's gonna have to live with in there,
Right.
inside.
Mm.
You know, that I see justice that way.
Mm.
You know, continued justice would be passing the bill. Then
Yeah,
that would be
yeah,
complete
yeah.
justice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I see. You know, that way it won't happen. It won't knock on somebody else's doorstep.
Yeah.
You know, and they have to go through what me and my family have been dealing with for these past years. So that's how I see justice, him getting convicted, but complete justice would be passing that bill so it don't touch nobody else.
I justice to me would be, I don't know. I watched this this murder,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I find out that he was just a jealous demon.
Right.
That was premeditated
Right.
murder. So he deserved it. Anybody deserves a death sentence would be him.
Right.
Because that was intentional. No doubt in our minds. I mean, anybody that to go through that, you know, I have the whole 9.5 minutes.
Right.
And you can't find it on YouTube. You can't find it anywhere. Only reason I have the piece that I have is because I had it from my archives.
Right.
You can't find, nobody will show it.
Well, it is something. The young lady that shot the video,
Mm-hmm.
she's a victim too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This is a young lady that's watching a man murdered in her presence, and Charvin is looking at the camera like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing tomorrow? You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
see Susie." You know, she's watching a person die, and there's nothing she can do.
Right.
She cannot step forward to give aid to the man. She doesn't know who he is, but she knows that he's dying. No child should have to witness that,
Right.
let alone an adult. I stood over a man dying a few months ago. It fell from the roof of our building, a workman.
Mm.
And I'm on the phone. I'm standing over him. He's dying. But that's a lot different than to see a person being put to death by another, and then again, a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A police officer.
But
Yeah.
but Graham, how often does that happen and we don't see it?
Well, thank God for videos.
Yes.
How often does this happen when we don't see it and people claim it?
Right.
You don't have a video.
And I've
Could you sit through watching this?
Yeah.
I want people to see this.
What, this video?
Yeah,
Oh,
the video.
Yes. I watched it numerous times. I've
All right,
watched it over and-
so I'm going to give everybody a take on what this looks like, because you can't see it anyplace else. All right, just run the last video, and we'll come right back out. We only have a few minutes left, but I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see what we're talking about. Now, you have to watch the rest of this. They pull up there with an ambulance, and the MST had to come over and push him off him. Yeah, he was dead a good 4 minutes before. Now you saw that was at the 6-minute mark, I think. And he had another 3 minutes. He was dead and gone, and he still had his knee on his neck. They had to lift him off him. If you saw the full video, it was, now that's intentional murder.
Yes.
Because he knew, and imagine all the people there were fighting over, and they saw it happening. Now, I can't imagine it, just seeing another human being being treated like that.
Right.
And we know what a wonderful person he was, and we know this guy had a beef.
Right. It's kind of, I want to say, like the streets when they say, "I'm gonna get him before he get me."
Right.
You know, and the more I looked at that video, and the more that's what I saw, and knowing the interaction they had with each other, whatever, whether it was the club or whatever, wherever it was, but that's what I see. I see it went beyond his badge. It was streets now.
Yeah.
You know, it was streets. It was, I'm gonna get him before he get me. And if I don't get him now, when he get up and he get better, what's to stop him from coming to get me?
But
You know,
how
even-
could a cop feel like that?
Huh?
How could a cop feel like that?
I feel because at the end of the day, police are human too. They gotta walk the streets just like we do.
But
so
George wasn't that kind of person.
no, he wasn't.
No.
Okay.
Because if
So
there was an
why-
issue,
Because
even,
of his size.
yeah, but
People see
he
his
knew
size.
George.
But he knew
He
George.
knew George. Even if George had walked away and he saw George walking, oh, that's George. I know where to find George. It's not like he's not unknown.
Right.
That's pure
He,
hate.
he knew George. If there was an issue, he could have gone and seen George, or just wait till he sees him at the club. Hey, George, I need to talk to you about such and such. I got stopped passing a counterfeit $20 bill. I got paid in cash when I was in college. And matter of fact, I went to the bank. And the lady was counting the money, counterfeit. What? I'm making a deposit. She said, this is a counterfeit bill. Where did you get it? All right. It was part of in my pay envelope. But she said, all right, I need your name and whatever. But the police didn't come and rough me up for having a counterfeit bill.
We got 2 minutes left. Gentlemen, you got 30 seconds each. Come back, gentlemen. I know you got a lot to say.
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly, you know, this is talking about the importance of recordings, the importance of cameras. The George Floyd bill is making sure that we're having more body cameras, and then there'll be recording and statistics around sexual assault by police officers and all that. I mean, this is an American issue. We gotta have this bill passed. That's all.
So, of course, when we talk about policing, we're the only community that has to worry both about the cops and the robbers. And when it comes to situations of where there's police misconduct, there are no parameters of which the public can address them, especially when you talk about white police officers attacking black bodies. And so when we talk about the agency being used as a form of terrorism, which we know that it's been they're terrorists in our community for years and years, what can we do to fight? And so we have to do all that we can to get the George Floyd bill passed. We can always talk about Malcolm X and that the great era in the 60s with Dr. King and all the activists. But if they didn't get the bill passed, the Voting Rights Act passed, the civil rights, then they would just be great orators at that time. It is our due diligence as activists, as preachers, as lawyers, as police officers and teachers, for us to come together and do what we did in the past, march and press on and press on. And if they don't come together as a government to pass this, we vote them out and vote in people who have our initiative.
Thank you. You know, I like to thank all of y'all for coming today. This is one dear to my heart. I feel destined to talk about this, you know. And,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm so glad you're here today, Terrence. I mean, just seeing you and knowing that you've got George's DNA and you reflect his image. And I know he's talking to you, and I'm glad you're part of the Nan family, and welcome home.
Thank you.
You know, and we all feel it.